Hello everyone, I'm Jacob Kaufman with NerdOnTheStreet.com, and welcome to Season 2 of Nerd on the Street News. I haven't done this show in a few months, so let me remind you how this all works. Nerd on the Street News is a tech news show that I make, and the idea is that it's a weekly thing. Every weekend I try to make an episode of Nerd on the Street News. Now, like I said, it's been a few months since the last episode I made. Basically what this is it's filler content because there's not always a new device that I have to unbox or review for you guys. There's not always a new piece of software for me to show you guys. So this is sort of a way for me to just keep you guys informed on what's going on in the tech world, and for me to keep myself informed, because I like reading tech news, and yeah, I like to know what's going on. So just a few things about the show once again. This is being recorded with my good camera. I'm not using the webcam for this show anymore like I used to, but we are recording in 1080p at 30 frames per second, because I want to be able to get these episodes out to you guys as quickly as I can. I don't want to have to wait around for, 4K video to render. It takes hours. So yeah, I'm going to be recording in this slightly lower resolution and not at 60 frames per second, because once again, that's twice as many frames that I have to wait for rendering. So yeah, we've got 1080p video, we've got obviously the Yeti for the microphone, so hopefully the quality is good enough for me to get my message across. You guys can see I'm using a tighter frame than I used to. It's more zoomed in on my face in this video than maybe the last couple Nerd on the Street News videos I did. There's a green screen behind me, and one possibility that I've had people ask me about is putting pictures about what I'm talking about behind me on the green screen. And that would be great. There's two reasons why I don't do that. Number one, copyright reasons. Obviously, every picture online is copyrighted by whoever put that picture online, and so even though I could just download it and put it up behind me, I might get in trouble from people who don't want me using their images. And the second reason that I don't do that is because, once again, I want to get these episodes out to you guys as quickly as possible. One of the reasons why Nerd on the Street News kind of died out a few months ago was because I just didn't have the time to get these out to you guys. I didn't have the time to, gather the news, record it, edit, render, and upload. I did record several episodes that you guys haven't seen between the last episode and now, but, news is time sensitive. And so I actually had a really good episode a few weeks ago that I wanted to, start making the show again. And I actually gathered a whole lot of really good stories, and I felt really good about that episode. But by the time that I recorded it and I, started editing and everything, when I would have uploaded that video, none of that news would have been relevant anymore. You guys would have already known about all of it. Yeah, if I had to worry about putting pictures behind me and, I'd have to frame the pictures so they looked good, and I'd have to worry about doing that on top of the green screen background that's already difficult enough. Yeah, it's just easier right now for me to not deal with pictures. It's just going to be me talking to you guys about whatever's on, the laptop screen. The reason that we're over here with the green screen and not sitting at my desk where I wouldn't have to worry about the green screen is because at my desk I would have to use my tablet or something like that. And once again, the name of the game here is speed. I want to get this news out to you guys while it's still news, while it's still fresh. And so yeah, laptop's just easier to use. And yeah, this is mostly an audio thing. Like, I'm here because it's a YouTube channel and everything. But like I said, this show is basically just me reading you guys some news. So yeah, that is a quick recap on what Nerd on the Street News is and why it's here. And here is your news for the week of August 16th, 2015. The NVIDIA Shield tablet has been recalled. Every single one of them that's ever been made. So in July 2014, NVIDIA, which is the company that makes a lot of graphics cards for computers and a lot of graphics chips for mobile devices, they announced that they were making their own tablet, the NVIDIA Shield tablet. And that device was possibly the single best Android tablet in 2014. Even this year, in 2015, up to this point, the Shield tablet is still considered to be a really good tablet. It's really powerful since it's got all NVIDIA hardware in it. It's really smooth, it's a really good experience. Now, it's been sold out everywhere for a number of months. I actually wanted to get one for my birthday this year, but nobody has any more of them in stock. Not even NVIDIA has any more in stock. So we've all been hoping that there was going to be the release of the NVIDIA Shield Tablet 2 toward the end of July or early August. And instead of getting the Shield Tablet 2, we found out that every single one of the Shield tablets that were made between July 2014 and July 2015, which is all of them, they have all been recalled. The recall is due to a battery issue. NVIDIA is asking customers to install an update on their device that lets them see what battery their device has. So there's a slight chance your tablet might not be affected if it has one of the newer batteries. But once again, NVIDIA specifically says any tablets sold between July 2014, when it was announced, and July 2015, which is when the recall happened, all of them have this battery in them that is prone to overheating and possibly even causing fires, which is a huge problem because, you leave your tablet on your nightstand while you go to work, and then when you come home, your house is burned down. That hasn't happened yet, but NVIDIA was concerned enough about things like that happening that they have issued this recall. Now, they're actually offering to replace tablets for free. If you go online to NVIDIA's website, you can put in your device's serial number, and then they will actually send you a replacement. And you don't actually have to send your tablet back yet. They're going to be sending out boxes to receive broken tablets in the next few weeks. But yeah, NVIDIA will actually send you a second tablet, and then when you turn that second tablet on, your first one will supposedly be deactivated. But people so far have found that the first one's not actually being deactivated. It's unclear whether the replacement tablets are brand new or refurbished, so yeah. NVIDIA's web store still says there's no tablets in stock. I was hoping this would at least mean they were going to start selling them again, because like I said, you couldn't buy an NVIDIA tablet the past few months. You had people saying, oh yeah, they're still totally worth the money, but nobody has them to buy. So yeah, as of now, you still cannot buy an NVIDIA Shield tablet if you don't have one, but if you do have one, you can get a free replacement because of that battery issue. A few weeks ago, Windows 10 was released, and I did a video on installing it. I've been taking a look at the features that it has and things like that, but one thing that I wasn't aware of was that Windows 10 actually is ditching the product key organization thing that Microsoft has always used for Windows. Windows has always had these product keys that you get a product key, and that is your key to that copy of Windows, and you can only use that product key on one computer at a time. But the nice thing about product keys, a bit of an oxymoron, but the one advantage that they did have was if you ever wanted to change computers, just put the product key into the new computer and your copy of Windows will switch its license over to that computer. That may not be possible anymore with Windows 10. There's a new thing called digital entitlement. And what this digital entitlement does is basically when you put in your product key into Windows 10 scans a bunch of information about your computer's hardware. Specifically, it looks like some things in your motherboard, and then that copy of Windows 10 is no longer registered to that product key. That copy of Windows 10 is now registered to your motherboard. So one problem with that is if you ever replace your motherboard, then your copy of Windows isn't going to be activated anymore. Now, people don't replace their motherboards very much. It is noted in this article that replacing your hard drive will not take away your license, like it has in the past. If you replaced your hard drive with Windows 7, you would just have to put your product key in again when you reinstalled on the new hard drive. Now, if you replace your hard drive and install Windows 10, it won't even ask you for a product key. It'll detect your motherboard, it'll say, hey, there's already a copy of Windows licensed to this computer, so that's all good. Also, upgrading your RAM will no longer prompt you to input a product key again because, once again, the information is stored in the motherboard somehow, or maybe information about the motherboard is stored in Microsoft's databases. I'm not really sure exactly how it works, but what I do know is this is convenient for now. It's convenient that we can do clean installs and not have to worry about product keys. It's convenient that we can upgrade the RAM. I've upgraded RAM in computers, and then Windows XP would say, hey, your computer's hardware changed. You need to put in your product key again. But, as soon as you want to change computers, then this is going to be a big pain in the butt, so we'll have to see how Microsoft deals with that. Usually, if you actually call Microsoft and you say, hey, I'm trying to license my copy of Windows and that's not working, Microsoft is pretty good, from what I've heard, about doing that over the phone for you. But yeah, it might just be a little bit of a pain if you ever do want to switch computers, because Windows 10 is, by default, locked to your device, from what it sounds like. If you've been wanting to try out Windows 10 but you own a Mac, you can now try Windows 10 in Boot Camp. Boot Camp now supports Windows 10 if you're running Mac OS X Yosemite on your computer. And this was interesting. I actually went back and I had to check if Boot Camp supported Windows 8 at all. And I think that Boot Camp never actually supported Windows 8. It did get an update for Windows 8.1, so you could still be running Windows 8.1 in Boot Camp. But yeah, the last version of Windows anyone really bothered to run on Macs was Windows 7. So I thought it was kind of interesting that Boot Camp was updated so quickly to support Windows 10, especially when, like I said, I'm not sure if it ever supported Windows 8.0. So yeah, that's good if, your business needs Windows or something. It probably doesn't at this point, but if you've been wanting to try out Windows 10, like I said, yeah, Windows 10 is now supported in Boot Camp. Not a lot of news there. Boot Camp works pretty well. If you don't know, Boot Camp is a utility on Macs that lets you dual boot. It creates a new partition for you to install Windows on, and then when you start your Mac up, you can choose Mac OS or Windows. Samsung has announced Samsung Pay, and it is yet another mobile wallet. Now, there are a lot of mobile wallets out there right now, and by a lot, I really mean a few, but those few are not being adopted very well. There's Apple Pay, and nobody that I know uses Apple Pay, and I've never seen Apple Pay being used anywhere. And then there's Google Wallet, and I've never seen Google Wallet being used anywhere either. So yeah, Samsung is kind of the Apple of Android, if that makes any sense. Samsung likes to think of themselves, at least, as the premium device manufacturer for Android. Samsung's new tablets are very, very similar to the iPads. Samsung's phones are always taking features from the iPhone, which that's not a bad thing at all. It's just interesting that, on the software side, it seems like Google and Apple are direct competitors. On the hardware side, Google's not actually competing with Apple because Google doesn't make any hardware. Samsung makes hardware. And so, yeah, now Samsung is competing with both Google and Apple. And, the other two, it's just, there's too many competitors in this setup. I won't say too many competitors. I don't think 3 is really too many. But it's interesting, yeah, Samsung has announced this new mobile wallet, which actually might be adopted easier than Android Wallet and Apple Pay. Because Apple Pay and Android Wallet use NFC technology, near-field communication technology, to communicate with credit card terminals. So if you want to use Apple Pay at a store, that store has to buy a terminal that supports Apple Pay. If you want to use Android Wallet, that store has to support Android Wallet. But Samsung Pay, actually, it looks like it uses a technology called magnetic secure transmission to basically pass along a credit card's magnetic strip to terminals. I've heard of this product called Coin, that it's this programmable credit card that you can put other credit card numbers into, and then you can select which credit card you want that coin card to act as, and then the magnetic strip on the coin card is actually, it reprograms itself to communicate different numbers to the credit card terminal. So I'm wondering if this Samsung Pay thing uses a similar system, because according to Samsung, most terminals already used by retailers that just are regular old magnetic credit card terminals will be compatible with Samsung Pay. So yeah, that's really interesting. If that's actually true, then this might actually be what brings mobile payment systems to the public. Because, yeah, the reason why Samsung is so successful is Apple makes really great hardware, but they're kind of expensive and they're kind of exclusive. They're getting less expensive and less exclusive, or at least less exclusive. I don't know about less expensive. But Google makes some really sophisticated software, but they don't actually make any hardware to back it up. Samsung got really popular because of its, its Galaxy line of devices that basically it takes Google's software and it makes really appealing, popular devices that are alternatives to Apple's hardware. So yeah, Samsung Pay, even though at first glance what I thought of this was I thought, this is not going to be unified. It sucks that this is going to be a Samsung-only feature. I don't use Samsung phones. I use LG phones. At least that's what I'm using right now. I'm not planning on getting a Samsung phone. So it kind of sucks that Samsung Pay is going to be this thing. And I don't know what store would not support Google Pay, but would support Samsung Pay, because less people are using Samsung phones than Google phones. But yeah, if stores don't actually have to go out of their way to support Samsung Pay, I could see this becoming a really cool feature, or at least a really cool gimmick. You know, kind of like Samsung's phones right now have fingerprint sensors that, they're all right. They're not as good as Apple's fingerprint sensors, but they're a cool thing to have. This could be a similar thing where it's like Samsung Pay. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but maybe it'll be a cool thing for Samsung users to have. Yeah, like I said, we're going to have to wait for more information on exactly how that technology works. Oracle has filed a lawsuit against Google, and it claims that Google has destroyed the market for Java. Now, when I saw that headline, I kind of did a mental double take, because if you're not aware, Android apps are programmed in Java. That is the default thing to do. If you want to write an Android app, you write it in Java. So how could Google possibly have destroyed the market for Java? Well, apparently it has to do with licensed things. Apparently Google actually never asked permission to use Java within Android. And so, yeah, Oracle is now saying that any device running gingerbread, honeycomb, ice cream sandwich, jelly bean, Kit Kat, or lollipop is infringing on Oracle's copyright. And that's a pretty big deal, because basically every Android device in existence is running one of those versions of Android. I know there were some other versions, but that's every Android version since 2010. So, that'll be interesting to see if Oracle gets anything out of that lawsuit. The last time this came up in court, in 2012, the jury decided that Google did infringe on Oracle's copyright, but it was split on the question of fair use. So it's not actually clear if Google's use of Java is fair use or not. Now, Java is open source, and this just kind of reminded me, you know, a few years ago, Oracle bought out Sun Microsystems. Maybe this was a little more than a few years ago, but Java used to be made by a company called Sun Microsystems. And if you look at what happened with OpenOffice, Sun made Java, it made VirtualBox, it made OpenOffice.org. And OpenOffice used to be the default Office suite in every Linux distribution. Every Linux distribution came with OpenOffice. And then when Oracle bought Sun, all of these Linux distributions stopped using OpenOffice. Some of them switched to like GNOME Office, programs, that those are pretty shoddy. And then there was the fork of OpenOffice, LibreOffice, and that was actually the well put together alternative to OpenOffice that even today most Linux distributions come with LibreOffice. But yeah, the reason why everyone switched away from OpenOffice in the Linux community was because Oracle is not friendly to the ideals of free and open source software. And their licenses are also not friendly to free and open source software. And so some distributions were not actually allowed to include OpenOffice, and some of them chose not to because they didn't like where Oracle was going with everything. And so the OpenOffice thing was, that was one thing. It's a Linux Office suite. If you're using Windows, you really don't care about what's going on with Linux Office suites. But Java is a multi-platform thing. Java is everywhere, and Android is also everywhere. And I thought it was really interesting. This kind of shows, Google used the open source Java APIs in the open source product Android. And now Oracle is trying to sue them for using their open source code in an open source project. We'll have to see how far that one goes. I had no idea that that was violating anything. I assumed that Google had permission to use Java, but you never see the Java logo in Android. This week, a federal judge made a ruling that could force tens of thousands of foreign workers to return to their home countries next year. Now, that's a pretty enticing lead to an article, so I had to read this one. There are a lot of STEM students working in the United States. There are a lot of engineers, as well as, computer programmers and anything to do with technology. There are a lot of STEM workers that are in the United States on student visas, but they're not actually studying, they are working. So this has been going on for a few years. This is nothing new, but this week a federal judge ruled that this whole program allowing all of these foreign STEM workers into our country might actually be taking some jobs away from domestic STEM workers. So I'm not going to go too in-depth in, the politics of immigration and everything, but I am just going to read. This program used to be a 12-month program. It's called an optional practical training program, where it would allow workers into the U.S. for 12 months to train or work at STEM jobs. This judge says that the problem was when that 12-month program was expanded to 29 months, which is almost 2.5 years that those people are being allowed in the country on a student visa. So yeah, this judge actually had the power, it seems like, to invalidate that whole program immediately and send those people home immediately, which is pretty crazy, but the judge did not do that. He gave the government 6 months, or until February 12th, 2016, to submit that extension for proper notice and comment. So, since this is government stuff, and not, technical stuff, government stuff is hard to read. It's hard to pick out what's actually going on. But yeah, it sounds like this judge has ordered the government to review this program and see if it is affecting the American workforce. So immigration attorneys are saying that if the Department of Homeland Security does not fix the problem with the program before the court's February 12th expiration, the optional practical training extensions will be terminated, and anyone with that student visa working a technical job will have 60 days to pack up and leave the country. And that is super crazy. I've got relatives who travel a lot, but here in the United States, we generally don't travel a lot. We don't get out of the country much. And so I could only imagine if I was trying to move to a different country, everything that would take in terms of, visas and things. I don't know how any of that works, which is a little scary because that means I'm kind of stuck here. But yeah, it's interesting to see that people might actually be kicked out of the entire country who are working this program. Now, I'm going into a technical field, so this might have a benefit for me if there's going to be more jobs available. I don't want to say too much because I know that that's a touchy subject. I know immigration and all that's a touchy subject. But yeah, thought I'd throw that in there. Chip-embedded credit cards are going to become the standard in the United States this October. So we all know there's been a lot of credit card hacks in the last few years. A lot of credit card database hacks that have leaked out a lot of customers' information, and there's been a whole lot of hubbub about that. So it sounds like what has happened is, in the past, that has been a problem for banks. Every time, obviously, if you're a bank and Target releases a whole bunch of credit card numbers on accident, or, not releases, but if Target is hacked and all of their credit card numbers go everywhere, and some of those credit card numbers belong to your bank, that's a problem for you. And it sounds like, the bank couldn't have been solely responsible, but it sounds like the bank was partially responsible for fixing all of that. Sending out new credit card numbers and reassigning everyone's stuff and making sure people don't get identity theft and all of that going on. So on October 1st this year, that responsibility of cleaning up the after mess of a credit card hack is going to be on the merchant and no longer on the bank. And actually not on the merchant specifically, but on whoever is using the least secure technology. So whoever's weak link in the chain caused the hacking thing to happen, that is the person who's going to be responsible for fixing. And by fixing that, I mean protecting the customers whose information was affected in the data breach. So the only thing that you as a shopper are really going to see as a result of this is lots of banks and credit card companies have been sending out new cards to customers, and these new cards are called chip cards, and they use a different technology than the magnetic cards that we're used to here. So normally when you think of a credit card, you think of a card with a black strip on it, and you swipe it through a terminal, and then basically that magnetic strip is just a magnetized series of numbers. It gives the terminal your credit card number, and then the terminal uses that credit card number to charge your account. So these new credit cards contain an embedded computer chip, and what you do is you don't actually swipe this anymore. You stick it into a terminal and you leave it there for a few seconds, and that computer chip, not only does the computer chip give the terminal your number, but then the terminal also talks to the computer chip. There's more communication going on. The computer chip actually encrypts your credit card number, and then it's decrypted when it gets to the bank, through the network and everything, through the payment network. And yeah, this computer chip, basically, The old system was your card spat out your credit card number, and that was all that it did. And now the terminal actually asks your card, is this payment authorized? And then your card answers back yes. So yeah, if you notice that you're going to be getting a new credit card, or if you notice you might already have some of these credit cards, a lot of cards have both magnetic strips and chips in them, because a lot of terminals are still using the old magnetic strip technology. But if you notice that your card has a little square chip on the front of it, yeah, the reason why that is because you're going to start seeing new terminals in a lot of stores where, like I said, instead of swiping your card, you stick it into a terminal and then leave it there for a moment and then remove it. And the actual communication is no longer being done during that swipe. The communication is actually being done while your card is sitting still inside the terminal. And yeah, like I said, there's encryption involved in this new system, and a lot of other countries have already switched to this. Canada is 90% switched to this. It's going to take a few years for us to get up to 90% adoption rate. By October 1st, which is, a couple months away, about half of merchants in the United States are going to be using this new system. If you notice that change in stores, then now you know why they changed their terminals to do that. Comcast is up to some shenanigans again. The company imposes a 300 gigabyte data cap on all of its customers, and this is nothing new. That means that if you use Comcast as your internet service provider, you're only allowed to transfer or download 300 gigabytes worth of data. After you pass that, you start getting excess charges applied to your account. There's a Twitter account that's just a general complaining Twitter account about all the crap that internet companies pull, and it's called Cable Cares. It tweeted Comcast's vice president a tweet that asked why Comcast's data caps are set so low compared to the speeds they're being sold at. So Comcast offers 100 megabyte per second speeds, and that can hit the 300 gigabyte data cap in around 6 hours. And that data cap is a monthly thing. So Jason Livinghood, the vice president of Comcast, like I said, tweeted back, "No idea. I'm involved on the engineering side to manage the measurement systems, but don't weigh in on the business policies." That tweet basically signals that the 300 gigabyte data cap isn't actually a technical restriction that Comcast puts in place. When asked about data caps, internet companies always say, oh, it's because we don't want our infrastructure to get flooded. We have to keep customers from breaking our infrastructure with too many downloads. So this tweet is basically confirming what critics to data caps already knew. The data caps don't really need to be there. There is no problem with the internet's infrastructure. The data caps are there because internet companies are greedy and they want more money. When Comcast put its first data cap in place back in 2008, it said its policy was to contact the top users of their high-speed internet service and ask them to curb their usage. So yeah, basically everyone's paying for internet, and the majority of people are overpaying, but for those select few that actually use their internet a whole lot, Comcast doesn't like it that they actually use the internet a whole lot. We have reports on several websites saying that Apple is looking into creating a self-driving car. So we all know that Google's been testing its self-driving cars on the roads in California, and obviously if Google is doing something, Apple's eventually going to do it too. They're going to probably wait a few years and then do it 100 times better. So Apple is reportedly looking at places to test its self-driving car right now. We haven't really heard anything up to now about self-driving cars from Apple, which is amazing because Apple has basically had all of its products leaked within the past couple years. But yeah, several Apple engineers met with representatives of a huge naval base in San Francisco, or near San Francisco. It's already a major testing ground for connected and autonomous vehicles for several other companies, and it's full of overpasses, empty roads, tunnels, and train crossings, so lots of things that cars would have to deal with on actual public roads. That makes it a really good place for people like Mercedes and Honda to test their self-driving cars, which they're already doing there, and it would make it a really good place for Apple to test their cars there as well. The executive director of the company who owns the facility said that they had to sign a non-disclosure agreement with Apple confirming that Apple was there and talking to them. However, they said, we can't tell you anything other than they've come in and they're interested. Based on the differences between Google's new products and Apple's new products recently, I think it's safe to say we would all trust Apple's self-driving cars a little bit more than Google's self-driving cars, because Apple is likely to continue pushing for privacy and for, individual processing, maybe directions being calculated in your car with the Apple cars, whereas Google is probably going to have all of the directions being calculated on one central server. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. And finally, our last story of the week. Samsung has unveiled the world's largest storage device, in terms of capacity, that is. It is a 16 terabyte SSD. And yes, that is a 2.5-inch SSD that could fit into any computer built to accept SSDs. So physically, this is a consumer level thing. It can go into any regular old computer, and it follows all of the same, standard dimensions and standard build qualities of regular SSDs. There's a lot of new technology involved in this SSD, particularly the 3 bits per cell 3D storage that I think I've talked about before, but if I haven't, basically Samsung is taking the flash storage cells that normally lay flat and they are lining them up on their sides inside the SSD case. Basically, the name of the game is just making everything smaller, and that's what Samsung has been working on. So yeah, the 16 terabyte drive, which by the way, the actual capacity is only 15.36 terabytes, is expected to use around 500 of Samsung's new 256 gigabit dies. So yeah, that SSD is not available for sale yet. It's expected to be very expensive, and even though, like I said, it is physically consumer level, economically it's really meant for large enterprises, specifically those building servers or clouds for their, companies. Right now, a 1 terabyte SSD will cost you $1,000. So even just taking that and being linear about it, a 16 terabyte SSD is going to cost $16,000, and you or me are not going to purchase that for our computers. But Samsung actually has some reference designs available, just some open blueprints that are basically Samsung going, hey, here's what you can do with our products, that show how you can use a bunch of these 16 terabyte SSDs to create a huge data center style server. The server that they showed off at the Flash Memory Summit last week showed a server with 48 of these new SSDs, which brings the total storage capacity of that particular server up to 768 terabytes. So yeah, if you've ever wondered how we are putting everything on the internet and not running out of space, stuff like this. That'll be really interesting in 50 years to look back on the tiny 16 terabyte SSDs that we were so excited about. But for now, that is everything. I know the news was a little slow this week. In fact, a couple of the news stories from this week were actually from previous weeks that I just wanted to kind of bring in because this week not a lot of stuff happened. Just a little bit more about this show specifically, since like I said, this is kicking off season 2. You guys are always welcome to submit stories if you think there's something important going on that I should talk about. I've actually created a forum just for this show at nerdonthestreet.com, so go to nerdonthestreet.com, go to our forums, and there's a forum called NOTS News. And if you go into that Nerd on the Street News forum, you can submit stories for us to talk about. There will also be a feedback thread, a feedback forum post for this specific episode and for every specific episode. Instead of putting all of the links to these news stories in the description of these episodes like I used to do, I'm just going to put all of the links in that forum post, and then I'm going to link to that forum post in the description of this video. So if you have any comments or, questions about things, you're always free to leave those in the comments of these videos, but you can also go to our forums, and yeah, once again, if there's any stories you want us to cover, go and make a forum post about it in that Nerd on the Street News section, and I will be sure to check up on that every week when I'm going to make the news. So yeah, like I was kind of saying earlier, but I don't think I really got all the way through my spiel, this is a low budget show right now. This is just filler content. Once again, I'm very open about that. If I had a new device to be, reviewing, or if I had a new piece of software to show you guys, then I would not be making this video right now. So I'm not sure if these are going to be weekly or not. I'm going to try and make these weekly, basically. And like I said, there's not going to be any pictures in the background. This is just me sitting here talking because school has just started for me, and so I'm going to have school to deal with all year long, plus other videos that we're making on this channel, and we've also got 2 other channels that we're dealing with here at Nerd on the Street. So this is a low-budget show. Now, if eventually we ever get some more resources for Nerd on the Street, then I would be happy to turn this into a higher-budget show, because I really do like the idea of doing a news show. News is incredibly important, and there is a whole lot of news right now. There's TV channels that are just news 24/7, so of course there's plenty of news. Now, since Nerd on the Street is based around technology, this is going to be a tech-specific news show, but I do like the idea of getting serious about a show that's just about news. Right now, this isn't an all-in super in-depth news show. This is just a little... basically, this is a collection of stories that I found interesting from the week. This is just a little aggregation of, interesting tidbits of tech news. But yeah, if you would be interested in a more serious news show like this, putting this higher up on the priority list here, let me know. Also, remember, if you want to help us reach that higher level of resources, if you want to help us put more time into Nerd on the Street, visit our Patreon page and consider being a sponsor. Because like I said, I really would like to take this stuff a lot more seriously than I do right now. Right now, there's just a lot of stuff that I have to divide my attention toward. So yeah, with that was your Nerd on the Street news once again for August 16th, 2015. I'm Jacob Kaufman with nerdonthestreet.com, and I will see you guys later. Bye.